Hey, what's up guys? This is the second part of the video for section 4.4. We're talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. So it's just a quick review. Remember that parallel lines, every time you guys graph, if you check the slopes, they will be the same. That's for parallel. Perpendicular lines, if you guys multiply the two slopes and you get a -1, that means they're perpendicular. Now, what this means when you multiply the slopes and you get -1 is that the two slopes are opposite reciprocal from each other. So if one's positive, one's negative, and they will be the reciprocal of each other. So I'm going to show you guys a couple more examples for this video. So let's get to them. This one here, we want to write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the given point, and it will be perpendicular to the given line. So first we need to understand what we want to find. So I'm just going to underline what we want. We want to write, first of all, we're not solving, we're not graphing, we are writing an equation in slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and remember what that form looks like. And I'm just going to write it down on the top so you know what it is. Slope-intercept form is when the y is by itself and you have y equals mx plus b. So the answer that we're looking for must be in that form, y by itself, and you have the slope mx plus b on the other side. So let's look at the first example here. We want a line that is perpendicular to the given one, this one here, and also it goes through this point. So what do we need? We need to talk about the slopes. So let me find the slope of the given line. The slope of this line, y equals -1/2 x minus 3, is -1/2. So I'm going to put m equals -1/2. Now, you guys can put a little 1 there. You don't need it, but I'm showing you guys that the first slope, m sub 1, is -1. The slope that we need, remember that we are looking for a perpendicular. Just to show you guys that again, perpendicular means the slope that we are looking for, the line, will have the opposite reciprocal. So I'm going to put here m sub 2 to show you guys the slope that we want. M sub 2 is going to equal the opposite of this right here. So we have a negative, it's going to turn positive, and the reciprocal of this fraction will be 2/1. Well, that actually reduces to 2. So we want a line that has a slope of 2. Now, how do we find that line? Well, first, you guys start using the point slope form. So let me write it down. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. X sub 1, y sub 1, that's from the point that is given. This point right here. This is your x sub 1 and your y sub 1. I'm going to substitute the numbers, I'm going to substitute the slope, and I'm going to change that equation into the slope-intercept form. Keep in mind also, guys, when you substitute x sub 1, y sub 1, the signs are going to change. So this -5, when you plug it in, it's going to turn into positive. This +2, when you substitute, is going to turn into negative. So I'm going to have y minus 2, so notice +2 became negative, equals my slope. Remember the slope that we want, this one here. So I'm going to put a 2 times the quantity of x. Let me check x sub 1. Oh, right now it's negative, so it's going to turn positive. So I'm going to have +5. Now I'm going to explain again why it turns to a different sign. Why do you have to change the sign? I did that on the previous video, but I can show you guys again. If you take the negative here, x sub 1 times the formula, has a negative already, minus a negative times a negative turns positive. And for the y, there's a positive and there's a negative. Positive times negative, well, it's negative. All right, now let's go ahead and change that to slope-intercept form. So I'm going to distribute this one here. I'm going to multiply. I'm going to have y minus 2 equals 2x plus 10. I need to get the y by itself. So I'm just going to put a box around the y so you guys know what we want. We want that by itself. So let me get rid of the 2 next to the y, the minus 2. Minus opposite is plus. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. and that's going to have y, this is gone, equals 2x plus 12. So my answer is here. This line, let me just zoom in a little bit. This line here is perpendicular to this line. And we know it's going to cross, this line is going to cross this point because that's what we use in the formula. And you guys can graph it and you guys can check, but they are perpendicular. Notice the slopes. This line has a -1/2. This line has a +2. They are opposite reciprocal from each other. And if you multiply the two slopes, you will get a -1 as the answer. So let's try the next one. The next one here, well, this one is a little bit different than the other one because first of all, here we don't have y by itself. So this is not your slope. I'm going to show you guys the little shortcut that I use to find the slope when it is standard form. And I'm saying standard because the x and the y are on the same side. So when you have the standard form, to find your slope, I'm going to put m equals, you're going to take the opposite of a divided by b. So which one is a? The one with the x. Which one is b? The one with the y. This number 9 is c, constant, but we don't need it. I just need the a and the b. So let's go ahead and find that slope. I'm going to substitute. So let me see. Opposite of a, so this is positive, opposite is negative. So I have a -5 over, and let me check b. b is minus -6. Do not change the sign of b. So I'm going to keep the -6. Careful with the signs because we have a negative divided by a negative. Well, that's going to turn to positive. So this slope right here is going to be 5/6. You guys cannot reduce, so that is my slope. So I'm going to put a m(1) right here so we know that's the slope of the first line. But what are we looking for? We're looking for a perpendicular. You guys see the word on the top right there, perpendicular. So that means that the answer we're looking for must have the opposite reciprocal. So let me write it down. m(2), that's what we want. That's the slope that we need to use. Opposite of this number, this is positive, so it's going to be a negative. And the reciprocal is 6/5. So that's what we need to use in order to use to find the perpendicular line. So what is the formula? What is the standard, not the standard, what is the point slope form? We have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x(1). Remember the points. This one here, this is your x(1), your y(1). When you substitute, you change the sign. And you are going to substitute the slope that we need. Do not change the sign of m. Only x(1) and y(1). So let's go ahead and substitute. So y(1) is +5, so it's going to be -5. M is -6/5. And we have x, let's check x1, that's -3, so it's going to turn to +3. All right, now I need to distribute. I need to get y by itself. That's going to be my slope in its form. So I'm going to multiply, I'm going to distribute. Y minus 5 equals -6x/5. Remember, you multiply the top times the inside, and you guys keep the bottom, the denominator. And then we get -18/5. Once again, you multiply -6 times 3. That's -18. There's the negative. And keep the denominator. There's a problem, all right? Look, the fractions. You cannot reduce. You cannot reduce. So in order to work with fractions, it's a lot easier if you get rid of them. And to get rid of them, you just multiply by the denominator. So I'm going to multiply all of this right here and all of this right here by the denominator, 5. So I'm going to put a 5 over here too because I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. And I'm saying 5 because that is the denominator. So when I distribute, I'm going to get right here 5y. I'm going to multiply -25 equals, I'm going to distribute, that'll be -30x/5. and I'm going to distribute, and that's going to be negative 90. That's a 90 over 5. Now, one thing that you can do, you can reduce the fractions. You can simplify the fractions. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to have 5y minus 25 equals negative 6x, 30 divided by 5, negative 30 divided by 5, negative 6, minus 18, 90 divided by 5. We need to get y by itself. So let's get rid of the constant, the minus 25. You do the opposite. You add 25. So we're going to have 5y, that's gone, equals negative 6x plus 7, lucky 7. So now to get y by itself, we are going to divide by 5. And make sure that you guys divide everything by 5. So this 5 divided by 5 turns into 1. We don't need it, so you put a y, equals negative 6 over 5x, you cannot reduce, plus 7 over 5, you cannot reduce. So my answer, y is by itself, that is the slope intercept form. Y equals negative 6 over 5x plus 7 over 5. So now you guys can see the whole work here. Remember that these two examples are to find perpendicular lines. On the previous video, I showed you guys how to find parallel. So make sure you guys check part 1 if you need to know how to find parallel lines. But this one is for perpendicular. Alright guys, this concludes my video. Make sure you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.